for helping make today's briefing possible. Their support reflects the kind of leadership urgently needed in this matter. We have gathered here today because the threat of transnational repression is not theoretical. It is real, it's dangerous, and it is happening right here on American soil. What we are witnessing is a deliberate campaign of cross-border authoritarianism orchestrated by Pakistani military-led regime. Inside Pakistan, the regime has launched a brutal crackdown, jailing peaceful protesters and journalists, using live ammunition on civilians, disappearing opponents, torturing detainees, and attempting to assassinate the country's most popular political leader, Imran Khan, destroying the judicial independence on the Dissent. But it doesn't end here. The regime has extended its tentacles beyond Pakistan borders, using digital surveillance, censorship, bogus legal notices, threats to family members and US-based dissenters. Recently, last year, when Pakistan military regime's General Assembly was visiting, members of Pakistani American diaspora demonstrated in front of Pakistan Embassy in Washington. Failure of FBI and Justice of Department to take concrete measures has emboldened Pakistan military regime, and they keep advancing its agenda of silencing dissent. More recently, after creating a dummy parliament after the election of 2024, February 2024, this dummy parliament was used to create constitutional amendment to bring all courts under command of executive. Now military control all the courts, and any decision that is coming out of these courts are indirectly or directly from the military regime. Recently what has happened that these courts have been used to order US tech giants like Google to block dissenting voices of journalists that are emanating from within US, Canada, and UK. And in the first week of July, just last week, Google and YouTube informed many journalists living and working in Western countries, especially US, UK, and Canada, that Pakistani magistrate has found their YouTube channel in violation of Pakistani cyber laws. So there is this risk of suppressing all dissent that people may be voicing. This is not governance, this is state-sponsored terrorism. It is a direct attack on global democratic norms and the rights and the freedoms of American citizens and residents. Today's briefing is a warning and a call to action, a warning that authoritarian regimes are no longer confined by geography, and a call for Congress, civil society, and US government to respond with resolve. We are honored here to be joined today with courageous voices who have paid the price of the truth, like journalists here, Dr. Mohit Pirzada, Ahmed Durrani, Salman Ahmed, our activist and musician, and human rights advocates Ben Linden and Raquel Leckerwood from Amnesty International. We are grateful to welcome the representatives from several congressmen's office, congressman and congresswoman's office, and I would implore you all, let this just not be a conversation but a catalyst. We urge Congress to advance the legislation such as Pakistan Democracy Act, HR 2311, and Countering Transnational Repression Act, HR 2158. We call for Magnitsky sanctions to those committing these crimes, and we demand the US tech companies stop cooperating with foreign dictatorships that seek to export censorship into our democracy. So let's begin. I'll give mic to Dr. Mohit Pirzada, who will start with first his testimony and then will moderate the rest of the events. We'll take a pause once a congressman or congresswoman comes in and take their remarks, and we'll get back to our briefing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Sudhir. I hope I'm heard. I was for promoting. So, a very warm welcome here. Before I, to all the International, to seriously threatening the freedoms guaranteed under the US Constitution to American citizens, residents, and lawful. This is not working. Okay. Now, transnational repression emanating from Pakistan's regime rights, which is now seriously threatening the freedoms guaranteed under the US Constitution to American citizens, residents, and lawful persons on the US soil, unless checked by a robust response from US Congress, administration, media, and human rights organizations. This will encourage transnational repression by other home states against the citizens, because they are now setting precedent. On June 14, 2025, Pakistani American communities from all over the US demonstrated outside Pakistan Embassy in Washington, D.C. Within 48 hours, Pakistani authorities identified the relatives of the two speakers in Pakistan through an electronic database and abducted several of them. Few Americans here have reported to the Federal Bureau of Investigation, but most have been intimidated into silence. While FBI keeps documenting such instances of transnational repression, absence of a more pronounced position by the Justice Department, Homeland Security, Department of State and Congress has emboldened Pakistan's military-led regime to keep advancing its agenda of silencing dissenting voices from all over the world, including the United States. As the Congressman will drop in, we will let them speak and then we will continue. And this is what we have decided. Now, situation is now reaching a tipping point. Pakistani military have already silenced all political opposition, media, civil society, and courts through relentless intimidation. It is rigged February 2024 elections and created a dummy parliament as a showpiece to interact with Washington and other Western democracies. This dummy parliament was then used for constitutional amendments to bring all the courts in the country under the command of the executive. Military that control all courts in Pakistan is now using the same courts as tools to order US tech giants like Google to block the dissenting voices of journalists that emanate from within the US, Canada, or United Kingdom. In the first week of July 2025, Google and YouTube informed many journalists living and working in the United States, Canada, United Kingdom, and Australia, including myself, that a Pakistani magistrate has found the YouTube channels in violation of Pakistani cyber laws, and unless these journalists on the US soil act on the Pakistani court order, Google can block their channels without any further notice. Congress needs to address these growing instances of transnational repression. It should take up the matter with Justice Department, persuading FBI to take a more proactive role against transnational repression. Congress can also plan hearings with US tech firms like Google, Meta, and X, formerly Twitter, to understand the nature of the pressures being exerted upon them by authoritarian regimes like Pakistan. Congressional hearings with tech firms, along with Justice Department, media, and human rights organizations like Amnesty, Freedom House, Human Rights Watch, Committee to Protect Journalists, Reporters Sans Frontiers, and others will help increase awareness of the growing challenge and will impress upon the tech firms that their business is not a car sales where revenue is the only consideration, but they are global platforms representing American values, and that it is the responsibility under the US Constitution to protect dissenting voices that emanate from the US soil, and that the journalists working from within the US, Canada, or the United Kingdom cannot be subject to Pakistani magistrates controlled by the Pakistani military. So with this overview, I will request my first speaker on my right, Rattle Lagerwood. Let me quickly say a few words about her. Rattle Lagerwood is the Advocacy Fellow for Amnesty International, USA, advancing human rights in the US foreign policy towards China and Hong Kong. Her research interests center on China's foreign malign influence and transnational repression. Prior to joining the Amnesty International, Rattle has worked for Human Rights Watch, United Nations Women, and the JP Economic and Cultural Office in Los Angeles. Over to you, Rattle.
people hear me with this?
Okay. First, I'd like to thank Dr. Julia and Dr. Moeed and First Pakistan Global for inviting me to speak with you all today on this panel to discuss the expansion of transnational repression and recommendations for lawmakers to protect the rights of dissidents and exile, activists, diaspora communities in the United States, as well as broader freedom of expression and assembly rights. So as Dr. Moeed mentioned, I'm the China Research and Advocacy Fellow for the U.S. section of Advocacy International, so you might be wondering why I'm here today. My portfolio covers human rights abuses within China and centers on human rights in U.S. foreign policy towards China. However, abroad, China is expanding its repressive reach against human rights defenders in exile, dissidents, and critics, as well as broader overseas diaspora communities. And I'm increasingly finding myself in this conversation on transnational repression. And so, is this better? Is this better?
I think it's really.
Is this working better? Okay. Okay, I'll do this then. My focus, while it's on China, transnational repression, of course, is happening by many state actors. In May 2024, Amnesty released its inaugural report documenting violations that are formally labeled as transnational repression, looking at actions against overseas Chinese and Hong Kong students studying at universities in 8 countries across Western Europe and North America, including the United States, at the hands of the Chinese government. However, Amnesty has also documented human rights violations in the past that amount to what we're now calling transnational repression, committed by or suspected to be committed by the governments of Azerbaijan, Belarus, Egypt, Eritrea, Iran, Laos, Russia, Rwanda, Saudi Arabia, Syria, Tajikistan, Thailand, Turkey, Uzbekistan, Vietnam, and many others, dating back to 2011. Thus, it's paramount that U.S. policy response to transnational repression is not country or government specific or solely responsible or responding to individual cases, but is rather structural and systematic to address all government actors, including the United States allies, to demonstrate a principled and zero tolerance policy for such abuses. So currently, I'll just go through very quickly some government action taking place over the past couple of years by the U.S. There are multiple federal agencies that are currently engaging on the issue of TNR, including the Department of Homeland Security, State, Justice, National Security, and the FBI, which are part of an interagency working group for TNR since 2021. And we can have a discussion about the potential implications if later folks are interested. But the FBI has been largely spearheading public-facing initiatives to address TNR, including training initiatives, local law enforcement, outreach programs aimed at building relationships with impacted communities, and a threat intimidation guide online in multiple languages to help raise awareness, and an electronic tip line for reporting attacks. However, the most pressing issue currently is that U.S. law does not currently define transnational repression. There are a couple of proposed bills, including the one that we have mentioned, HR 2158, that are looking to address these, as well as HR 2139 and HR 2116, which are looking to amend the Homeland Security Act of 2002 to enhance local law enforcement capabilities and set up some reporting requirements under the Department of Homeland Security. We're also looking at conversations for reintroduction of the TNR Policy Act from last session that builds upon the 2021 Mission Command, which included these restrictions, as well as the 2022 National Authoritarian Act that urges Interpol to ensure that authoritarian regimes do not misuse agency resources to target dissidents and journalists, and would require state departments to establish new reporting practices. While we're largely supportive of that, it's very disjointed currently, and under the current administration changes across multiple federal agencies, it's unclear how much of this coordination was growing attention on these risks that have resulted in a number of countries of concern legislation at the state level, mainly restricting investment and procurement and in real estate purchases, data and privacy protection, research security, as well as some explicitly on national repression, including current California state legislation. And at the multilateral level, last month, G7 leaders, including the United States, issued a statement condemning transnational repression, including a definition on TNR that we hope will serve as a framework for states to build a common understanding and global accountability mechanism. However, responses to transnational repression also have the potential to contribute to serious human rights abuses if not informed by the needs of impacted communities. We have concerns that U.S. government responses are likely to overly rely on broad and sweeping criminalization policies and policing measures similar to initial counterterrorism efforts that we saw in the early 2000s. So it is imperative that the United States, be it at the federal or the state level, are careful to ensure that efforts to combat transnational repression are narrow and nuanced in scope, do not infringe on the civil liberties of these ethnic groups, and do not fuel ethnic hate or discrimination. So I have just three brief recommendations and then I'll that ARUSA is making to Congress lawmakers to pass legislation that defines transnational repression and ensures that relevant federal agencies, authorities, and government officials have all the legal authorities necessary to address, collect, and share information within their agencies, to report statistics on and those be publicly available for civil society to use, and to provide training and community outreach initiatives for transnational repression. These policies should also aim to work jointly with allied states and multilateral institutions to raise TNR so far as these issues. Secondly, the legislation should also allocate funding to non-governmental and civil society organizations that provide direct support and resources for survivors of transnational repression, including psychological and social support services, immigration and legal aid, to ensure that the assistance to impacted individuals and groups is sustainable. Lastly, I would encourage lawmakers to encourage the administration to increase protection measures for human rights defenders in exile, dissidents, and overseas and diaspora communities experiencing TNR by including expanding humanitarian pathways for legal and permanent status in the United States. Ultimately, what we're recommending is a holistic approach that tries to not just do preemptive things that would criminalize actors who are engaging in TNR, but provides a holistic approach for supporting survivors in the long term so that they're not left after these attacks have happened.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Aidan, and thank you so much to Director Lagerberg from Amnesty International. Let me quickly invite the Congressman Representative Suhas Subramanian, who's here with us. Suhas Subramanian represents Virginia's 10th Congressional District in the United States House of Representatives. A former White House technology advisor in Virginia State Legislature, Congressman brings deep expertise in cybersecurity, technology policy, and civil rights. Representative Subramanian has been a strong advocate for democracy, privacy, and minority rights. He serves on the House Committee on Homeland Security and the House Committee on Science, Space, and Technology, which is so relevant to the decision that we have at the moment where we see that the authoritarian regimes like Pakistan are trying to order the US tech giants like Google to courts in Pakistan. He had worked on critical issues such as data privacy, infrastructure security, innovation. As a great friend of Pakistani American community in Virginia, he continues to support efforts to combat authoritarian overreach and protect civil liberties both at home and abroad. Congressman, would you like to speak from there?
Here is okay. Yeah, I want to thank everyone for all their work today. It's very important work. I represent a really large and fantastic Pakistani community in Northern Virginia, and they share a similar story to my family, where they came here over the past 20 to 40 years and made a beautiful life for themselves. Many of them still have family back in Pakistan, and it's devastating to see both the erosion of democracy there, as well as the fact that when you speak out here, there's a punishment to you or especially your family back there too. And that's what we're trying to look at. We've been almost 1,000 documented cases of this transnational repression that we're talking about today. And I had the pleasure of hosting a listening session with some of the folks here in the room and many others in our community. And the message was loud and clear that we have to make sure that democracy returns in Pakistan, and that we can have a relationship with Pakistan to where it can be two booming democracies working together hand in hand, and not what we have now, which is the repression and the jailing of someone who was democratically elected, really. And so that's a real shame, and I'm going to continue to work with my colleagues. I'm a co-sponsor of the Pakistan Democracy Act. We're hoping we can push this forward, this Congress, in a bipartisan way. We're going to continue to work together because I think in the end, the safety of people in Pakistan as well as people here and their families is paramount. And this is an American issue. The U.S. should care deeply when a U.S. citizen is involved and attacked in any sort of way. And so we have to continue to speak up about those things. And this afternoon I'm joining the Tom Lantos Human Rights Commission. We're going to have a hearing specifically on democracy and human rights in Pakistan. But I'm excited to be here today. Thank you for all the work that's being done by the group here. And I look forward to negotiating with Congress. Yes.
Science, space, and technology. This new development that authoritarian regimes using their codes to remotely control to order the US tech firms like Google, Meta, Twitter to silence the dissenting voices. What can we do about that? We have hearings, we reach out to them.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. This is not anything new. There's many other countries around the world that have put the same kind of pressure. I think one is to call it out and make sure that people know about it, and two, to work with our private sector. In the end, many of them, when they do push back, a lot of these countries do want them in their markets, and so when they at least start to push back, what we don't want is for them to cower in fear and just be a rubber stamp for the country. That involves the U.S. government standing up for those companies and helping engage with them, and not just leave them out to dry and feeling like they can't enter this market unless they cower to whatever regime is in charge.
So do you get all this from the international help? I mean, if you reach out to the right communities.
Yeah, I think a hearing, maybe a letter too. I think a letter might be effective as well. And whatever else we can do to just show that members of Congress care about this, and also this administration, if they do decide to engage. But we have to work together bipartisan way to work with our private sector companies on making sure they're not in a position of just doing rubber stamping or whatever.
So we definitely try to work with your office on
Yeah, I
that.
love that. That'd be a great idea. We've got some good people in the room here today.
Thank you, Congressman.
Thank you.
Okay, as I had said that, thank you to the Congressman from House. On for record, I can invite, request Ben Linden, human rights expert, Advocacy Director for Europe and Central Asia with Amnesty International, USA US on human rights in United States foreign policy. Prior to joining Amnesty and served as US State Department, the US Commerce Department, and the Office of the Oregon Senator Jeff Merkley, who himself initiated various traditional transnational repression and worked with on transnational repression. He also worked at the Asia Society in New York. Over to you. You want to come here? You want to use that? Yeah. Go ahead.
Thank you so much for having me.
Maybe you're closer to yourself. Maybe this.
Can everyone hear me? Great. restrictions were also placed on various social media platforms during the election period, particularly during virtual rallies held by PTI. Authorities summoned at least 32 journalists under the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, or PICA, for alleged propaganda against the judiciary. And this last November, the journalist Matula John was arrested on terrorism and narcotics charges for his critical reporting of the government's handling of protests. This also comes in the context of a broader crackdown using military courts to silence critics. One exemplary case is that of Idris Fatah, who was detained in 2019, forcibly disappeared for a number of months before reappearing. And when we found out, he was tried in secret under military court with limited access to legal counsel. He, Mr. Fatah, is a human rights defender and a lawyer and a former Amnesty International consultant. His trial in military courts shows the inherent unfairness and arbitrariness inherent in military courts. He is now 62, suffering from diabetes without meaningful access to health care. We need his voice now more than ever, and we are calling for his immediate release. On transnational repression worldwide, the government has targeted family members of the PTI. They have gone after Roshan Fatah, the cousin of Idris Fatah, who himself is studying at Cambridge in the UK. We have seen killings abroad of Pakistani human rights defenders and journalists under suspicious circumstances. Speaking here of Arshad Sharif, Karima Baloch, and Sajid Hussain. Congress should work with the Trump administration to raise these issues with the government of Pakistan and urge the government to ensure, first, an end to the practice of enforced disappearances, second, an end to the threatening of human rights defenders living abroad, third, the prompt accession to the International Convention for the Protection of All Persons from Enforced Disappearance, fourth, to amend the laws restricting the right to freedom of expression, including the Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act, and bring those laws in line with international human rights law and the ICCPR, as well as other international instruments, and to immediately lift the ban on social media platforms, including X, and ensure uninterrupted access to digital platforms and internet services. Finally, the government should establish the Commission for the Protection of Journalists and Media Professionals and provide meaningful protection and safety measures to journalists. Thank you so much again for this timely discussion, and I look forward to the remainder of the conversation.
Thank you, Benny Linden, and the Boston director you just heard from Advocacy International. With this, I will request Salman Ahmed, who is a prominent musician, activist, has written extensively, spoken extensively on the issues related to Pakistan democracy. Over to you, Salman. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Moeed, Pakistan First Global. Thank you for inviting me. Just drove from 4 a.m. from New York and just got in time. And very pleased to see Eamon Durrani here and the rest of the panelists. Before I begin, I'd like to ask a question, ladies and gentlemen. How many of you visited Pakistan? Can you raise your hands? And you're Pakistanis who are raising your hand, right? So the people who haven't been there, I want to give you, I was born in Pakistan. I went to medical school in Pakistan. I started 2 rock bands in Pakistan, played all over South Asia. I never felt that I was in a North Korea kind of state or a Soviet Union, Myanmar state. At this point, just imagine all those films about the Soviet Union or North Korea, militarized control, absolutely no freedoms. And I'm not exaggerating. I took some notes down, so I'll just share this with you. The truth will set you free. Yet everything reveals its truth in the end. I'm Dr. Salman Ahmed, a Pakistani American physician, artist, as Moeed said, that my human rights defense gets me into trouble quite often. On April 7th, 2025, In the biggest province of Pakistan, Punjab, the Lahore police filed baseless charges against me under this draconian PICA law. What is PICA? Prevention of Electronic Crimes Act. And this was for my ex-posts, social media posts, in which I condemned Field Marshal Asim Muni's brutal regime. What was my crime? Exposing a government that imprisons a former prime minister in a death cell, orchestrates a November 2024 Islamabad massacre, and it weaponizes this draconian law, the PICA law, to silence dissent. As my friends have said, this is transnational repression, an alarming tactic where authoritarian regimes like Pakistan's reach across borders to intimidate and terrorize Americans. And I also want to tell you that my family moved to the United States in 1961. And so we grew up in America. America is our home, and Pakistan is our cultural homeland. Imagine this. On May 5th, 2023, 15 masked men stormed my sister and Sanya and brother-in-law Shahid's home in Karachi, both US citizens. Acting on orders likely from Pakistan's ISI, Inter-Services Intelligence, they demanded my social media passwords, threatening my sister, silence Salman or will destroy your family. Now my sister Sanya battles with lupus. This was 2 a.m. and they got my brother-in-law and sister out of their bedrooms, broke the furniture, destroyed the glass windows, and they had no documentation on them. When my sister asked them that how do I know that you're not just here to, you're not burglars, they said they threatened to torture her and do worse. What they ended up doing was they gave my brother-in-law, put a black mask over his head, and blindfolded him for 5 days. Has nothing to do with politics, nothing to do with my activism. So every day I receive death threats online. My family in Pakistan is harassed. On July 8th, just a couple of days ago, it was my mother's 82nd birthday. And when I called, because I'm exiled, but I called her to wish her a happy birthday, her voice told me that she was afraid that somebody's listening in. And anytime I veered from the birthday party, she said, "Beta chup ho jao. Just keep quiet." It's unbelievable. 82 years. So that's not just my story. Pakistani Americans, like journalists, my friend Ahmed Durrani is sitting right next to me, or the US residents, they are facing this on a massive scale, including our families. His brothers were abducted. Another designer, Khadija Shah, Pakistani American, jailed for activism. They share this plight, and thousands of families are affected, both here in the United States and in Pakistan. Under Field Marshal Munir, Pakistan military, with enablers like the Interior Minister Mohsin Naqvi, former Foreign Minister Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, targets dissidents, families abroad, with intimidation, detention, and violence. Mohsin Naqvi vowed to clear protesters in minutes. This is the massacre that happened in Islamabad in November. And that night, dozens of people were slaughtered. We don't even know how many people were slaughtered because everything was wiped out. The hospitals had multiple people with gunshot wounds, but the doctors were told, don't tell the press that these are gunshot wounds. Zardari promised brute force and blood followed. These aren't empty threats. They are war cries against freedom, echoing even here in America. Transnational repression threatens America's sovereignty. Pakistan's regime spies on us through their embassy and their consulates. The embassy and the consulate in the United States are just fronts for the ISI. They threaten us, they seek to silence voices of dissent, And so I just want to quickly come to words aren't enough. We need bold, urgent action. As Pakistan's leaders seek trade deals in Washington, I implore President Trump, Secretary Rubio, and Congress to act decisively. Number one, condemn and sanction, publicly denounce Pakistan's draconian PICA Act, which targets, as Mohit said, journalists, anyone who wishes to criticize who are dissidents, they want to shut them down. Two, demand accountability. Free Imran Khan and set up an independent judicial commission on the Islamabad massacre and May 9th. May 9th was an event in 2023 which it was a false flag, but the army has basically said that it was done by Imran Khan and the PTI. So we want an independent judicial commission on that. Cut aid to tyranny. Suspend US aid to Pakistan until it restores democracy. An independent judiciary and false attacks on dissidents. I've testified before Congress, the Senate, the State Department, and law enforcement agencies of the United States. I stand ready to share evidence of these authorities. This fight transcends me. It is for every American whose voice is threatened, for every Pakistani yearning for freedom under Field Marshal Munir's boot. Thank you.
Thank you, Sulman. We're running short of the time. We have to hand over the room. I'll quickly request Ahmed Durrani. A word about him. Ahmed is a very prominent investigative journalist who has worked for a number of years with the News International in Islamabad, which is the paper arm of the GM News Network. A few weeks ago, his brothers, he published a story, Fact Focus here in the United States, and his brothers were abducted by the Pakistani military, were accused and under a lot of pressure from the United States Congress they were released. And so he's a direct victim of the Transnational Repression. I request Ahmed Durrani to present his points.
Thank you. Basically, I am an investigative journalist and I work in Pakistan's capital, mostly covering the bad governance and corruption in Islamabad for like 15 to 17 years. And I am here in the United States for last 5 years. Here I set up a digital media platform with the name Fact Focus, and using which I started reporting about the subjects which I was not able to report while I was in Pakistan. The Pakistan's army is the strongest institution in Pakistan which controls the parliament, the judiciary, the media, and runs all the biggest businesses in my country. We know about the corruption of Pakistan's top military journals, but this corruption was rarely reported in Pakistani media. Using the platform of Fact Focus, I started reporting about the corruption of Pakistani military journals in August 2020, and I reported how Pakistani military journals accumulated wealth across the globe in most of the European Western countries. To be precise, in 2022, when I reported about the then Army Chief of Pakistan, General Governor Bajwa, different cases were registered against me and my family house was raided in Islamabad. Right now, frankly speaking, I have lost the count of how many cases have been registered against me and against my family. And I'm being honest about this. I don't know. These are in dozens. Almost every day I receive a WhatsApp message from some colleague journalist from some city of Pakistan that another FIR has been registered against me. And by the way, unless I was in Pakistan, there was not a single case against me. All this happened when I started working after coming here. A few weeks back when I reported about the bad governance, about nepotism, about corruption of the current Army Chief, General Asif Police, this time not only the cases were registered, but my family house in Islamabad was raided by Pakistan Army's intelligence agency, which is called military intelligence, and they kidnapped my two brothers. They kept them in confinement like for 33 days, and then released them by staging a drama that they were basically kidnapped by some dacoits, and they were tortured during the last 3 days of their captivity with the so-called debtors. Their situation is terrible. Let me tell you that the digital media platform Fact Focus was blocked in Pakistan 8 days before the general elections in February 2024. There was another digital media platform with the name Haqaiq, which is Haqaiq.com, Urdu platform which runs stories in Urdu, the Fact Focus stories in Urdu. That has also been blocked only 2 weeks before, like with Izada and many other journalists who criticize the Pakistan Army. My channel, YouTube channel, which is one of my major sources of income, has also been blocked. There is no one to listen. There is no one. There is no judicial forum left in Pakistan where we can go and we can highlight these acts by the Pakistan Army. So the last thing that I will add is that I can only hope that US Congress will proceed with some kind of legislation or will at least pressurize the government in some way that it stops supporting dictators in countries like Pakistan. We Pakistanis are very much shocked because of the recent visit of the Army Chief General Asif Munir to the United States, where he was welcomed in the White House. At least such acts should be stopped, and United States government, which is obviously government of a superpower, should at least use its influence to pressurize the dictatorial governments in the world, so they may make them stop these kind of atrocities against freedom of speech. Thank you for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, everybody. Time is up. Let me offer just a quick recall. First of all, I thank all the people representatives here, the international, the America, professional leaders that the time out to join us here, and Congressman Suhas Subramaniam. Transnational repression is emerging as a threat. I think the first important challenge is to raise an awareness about it. Because right now, the way things are, people think it's some esoteric, sophisticated, legal concept coming from the congressmen, senators like Jeff Clay and the teams, and they don't realize the implications of the transnational repression. Because 15 years ago, you would not have this kind of transnational repression. It is a byproduct of the age of technology and social media, where the authoritarian regimes in countries like Pakistan, Turkey, Syria, Iran, North Korea, China, they actually think that the ideas that emanating from within the United States can hurt them, their politics and their interests. This is a totally new idea. 10, 15 years ago, they would not have felt threatened and insecure because of these technological platforms like Meta, like Twitter X, like Google, like Facebook, like YouTube. So they are now using lawfare and their own executive power within the countries to abduct, to arrest, to detain, to harass the relatives of the people who are US citizens, US residents, and hopefully US persons on the US soil. And now the latest trend which we have seen is that they are using their votes, which they totally control, like that happened in the first week of July. The Pakistani magistrate, which is just an extension of the Pakistani executive controlled by the Pakistani military, has issued orders to the US tech firm Google to block 27 YouTube channels. This is a new phenomenon. So our struggle to raise the awareness has just started. We would like to continue more with this engagement with the human rights organizations, with people like from Amnesty International, the Human Rights Watch, with Committee to Protect Journalists, and all the congressional teams to raise the awareness and to engage the US platforms, to engage the Justice Department, to persuade the Justice Department for FBI to be more proactive on this challenge. With this, once again, I thank all of you who have taken time out to join us here today. Do you want to have a word, Dr. Osman? Would you like to come on it? Yeah. All for action on behalf of the First Pakistan Group. Thank you so much once again from my side.
Hello, good morning everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm representing First Pakistan Global here, which stands for democracy, civil liberties, rule of law, and human rights. So the focus today is transnational repression. Transnational repression by Pakistan's military-led fascist regime escalates during harassment, censorship, and psychological warfare against US-based activists. We urge the US government to adopt the following immediate and upcoming measures. The first would be the congressional action. So we are requesting to hold a full hearing on Pakistan's transnational repression under fascist regime led by General Asim Munir. Launch a House Foreign Affairs Committee hearing on crimes committed against US residents by Pakistan's military and intelligence apparatus. Hear direct testimony from victims like Mr. Noorani, Mr. Salman, Dr. Mohit Pirzada, human rights defenders, and national security experts. Investigate how US tech companies like YouTube, Google are being manipulated by kangaroo courts ruling from Pakistan to censor pro-democracy voices in America. The legislative action could be impose Magnitsky sanctions on Pakistan's fascist regime and journals responsible for censorship, torture, and political engineering. Include provisions in the National Defense Authorization Act to penalize regimes engaging in digital repression and harassment of US residents. There is already a House Resolution 2311, which is Pakistan Democracy Act, which is right now in the Foreign Affairs Committee. And there is another legislation by Congressman Pfluger to strengthen the laws about transnational repression. State Department should declare Pakistan's action as a systematic campaign for transnational repression, publicly condemn Pakistan's military regime for its authoritarian tactics and extraterritorial repression, condition all military aid, diplomatic cooperation, and IMF negotiations on measurable democratic reforms and human rights protections. We need to form a global diplomatic coalition to end cross-border persecution of activists and journalists, including pressure on complicit third countries like UAE and Kenya to end renditions and abductions. FBI should classify these foreign-backed threats as domestic national security risks. FBI must launch a criminal investigation into foreign surveillance, intimidation, and cyber harassment of Pakistani American citizens. Coordinate with Department of Justice and Department of Homeland Security to establish a special unit to monitor and deter foreign intelligence operations targeting against US residents. Ensure victims of transnational repression receive full protective support under federal law, including the families of those targeted in Pakistan for activism abroad. The White House role should be that President Trump must issue an executive order protecting US residents from foreign regime repression. The President should direct all federal agencies to treat transnational repression as a critical human rights and democracy threat. Establish an interagency task force to proactively protect targeted dissidents, especially from countries like Pakistan, Iran, Russia. Use presidential authority to impose visa bans, asset freeze, and revoke access to US institutions for Pakistani military regime engaged in repression. Technology and free speech. Protect the voices of Americans residents from foreign military censorship. Congress and FTC must demand transparency from tech companies regarding foreign government censorship requests. US platform must resist takedown demands based on political charges or sham court verdicts from authoritarian regime. Establish a democracy shield protocol requiring tech companies to notify and defend US-based users targeted by foreign governments. This is not just about Pakistan. It is about whether America will allow dictators to export fascism onto US soil. If we stay silent now, we signal to the world's worst regimes that our democracy is open to manipulation, our platforms are for sale, and our people are unprotected. Congress must act now, the State Department must speak about it, and the FBI must defend US citizens, and the President must lead all those efforts. Thank you so much all for joining today. We hope you all raise voice against this repression, and the people who are facing transnational repression, their right should be protected. Thank you so much.